Ladies and gentlemen, scholars, seekers and all who gather here today, I invite you to step back in time, across the golden sands of the Islamic Golden Age, into the mystical heart of 9th century Baghdad. There in the courts, mosques and crowded bazaars, walked a man whose words set the entire world of theology ablaze, not merely with controversy, but with a fire that has never truly gone out. His name was Hussain ibn Mansur Al-Hallaj, and in the history of Islamic mysticism, no figure stands more haunting, more luminous, or more tragically magnificent than he. Al-Hallaj was born around 858 CE in the Tur region of Fars, in what is now modern-day Iran. He grew up in an era when Sufism was still finding its language and theological footing. He would become one of Sufism's most radical and unforgettable voices. He was executed in 922 CE in Baghdad, condemned because of what he said about the love between the human soul and the divine. His insistence was that divine love transcends all rational boundaries, all legal definitions, and all human categories. The central question we explore today is why he believed this, and why it remains so deeply relevant. To truly understand Al-Hallaj, we must first understand the world he lived in. The 9th century was an age of extraordinary intellectual ferment in the Islamic world, with Baghdad at its very center. It was the seat of the Abbasid Caliphate, and the intellectual capital of the world. Scholars translated Greek philosophy into Arabic, debated free will, and codified Islamic law with meticulous and systematic precision. The Mutazilites championed rational theology, the Ash'arites countered with divine sovereignty, jurists produced detailed legal frameworks. It was in the truest sense an age of reason applied rigorously to faith. Into this world of ordered theology and systematic jurisprudence stepped the Sufis, mystics who believed that the heart, not the intellect, was the true organ of genuine spiritual knowledge and divine nearness. The great Sufi masters before Al-Hallaj, Hassan al-Basri, Rabia al-Adawiyah, and Junaid of Baghdad, had all explored the inner dimensions of Islamic faith while remaining within theologically safe boundaries. Al-Hallaj would shatter those boundaries. He studied under the great master Junaid, who reportedly recognized the dangerous fire in his young student and warned him to remain careful and contained in his expressions. But Al-Hallaj could not contain what burned within him. He could not keep the experience of divine love within the polite framework of scholarly discourse. Love for him was not a concept, it was a consuming reality. Ana al-Haq, I am the truth. These three words, Ana al-Haq, meaning I am the truth, became the most discussed, condemned and celebrated utterance in the entire history of Islamic mysticism, echoing across centuries without fading. In Arabic, al-Haq, the truth, is one of the 99 names of God. When Al-Hallaj declared these words, conventional theologians and jurists heard only one thing, a man claiming to be God himself. This interpretation, while legally coherent within orthodox frameworks, entirely misses the mystical point. Al-Hallaj was not claiming to be God in the way a man might claim to own a title or property. He was articulating the experience of the lover who has been so completely annihilated in love, so entirely absorbed into the beloved, that the boundary between self and the divine completely dissolves. He was describing not arrogance but the ultimate self-emptying. He was saying, I have loved so completely that there is no I left, there is only the truth, only God, only the infinite beloved remaining. In Sufi tradition, this state is called fana, annihilation. It is the obliteration of the ego in the fire of divine love. What remains is a transparent vessel through which the divine light shines unobstructed. Ana al-Haq was not a statement of self-assertion, it was a confession of self-erasure. And it was precisely this claim, that love dissolves the human self into God, that reason could never fully comprehend. In Islamic theology, the greatest faculties of the human being were traditionally considered to be the intellect and the revealed word. Intellect helps distinguish right from wrong through careful logical inference. Revelation delivers what intellect cannot reach alone. Knowledge of God's commands, His attributes and the path of salvation. Together, intellect and revelation formed the backbone of classical Islamic religious thought. Al-Hallaj did not deny the value of intellect or revelation, but he insisted that the experience of divine love belongs to a dimension that intellect simply cannot fully enter or understand from the outside. Reason can analyze love from the outside, catalog its symptoms, and describe its outward effects on the lover. But reason cannot know love from within. It lacks the interior access that love itself demands. The love between the human soul and God is, by its very nature, an interior experience that transforms the knower beyond the categories in which reason normally operates. It rewrites the knower from the inside. In the Kitab al-Tawasin, his most important prose work, Al-Hallaj describes the Sufi path in terms of fire and light, of longing and union, and of the moth that is drawn irresistibly toward the burning flame. The moth does not calculate the temperature of the flame. It does not weigh the pros and cons of its approach. It is drawn by a love more fundamental than any rational consideration, and in the end it is consumed. Kill me, O my trustworthy friends, for in my being killed is my life. This paradox, that death to the self is the birth of the true life, cannot be resolved by reason. It belongs to a logic higher than logic, a knowledge deeper than the mind's ordinary ego-bound understanding. One of the most striking features of Al-Hallaj's spirituality is his profound embrace of suffering. For most of us, pain is something to be avoided, endured as briefly as possible, and overcome at the first opportunity. For Al-Hallaj, the pain of longing for God, the deep ache of separation from the beloved, was itself a gift. To suffer in love was not punishment, it was a sign of being chosen by the one beyond all choosing. This attitude towards suffering places Al-Hallaj firmly in the tradition of the great lovers of world mysticism, alongside the psalmist Rumi, and the Christian mystic John of the Cross traversing the dark night of the soul. Reason protests against this understanding. Reason asks, why would a loving God cause his servant to suffer? These are questions theology has grappled with for millennia, often with great intellectual sophistication, but Al-Hallaj's answer is not a theological argument, it is a lived testimony. He does not explain the paradox, he inhabits it. He does not resolve the contradiction between love and suffering, he embraces it completely. He drinks the suffering to the last drop and declares it sweet. This is perhaps the most important reason why divine love lies beyond human reason, because it reverses the ordinary calculus of all human values. What reason calls loss, love calls gain. What reason calls death, love calls life. What reason calls madness, love calls the highest wisdom. Al-Hallaj was the Majnun par excellence, the one consumed by divine love. In 922 CE, after years of controversy, imprisonment and deliberation, the Abbasid court finally condemned Al-Hallaj to death. The charges were multiple: theological heterodoxy, political subversion, disturbing public order, but at the heart of it all was his insistence on the union of the human soul with God through love, a claim that the guardians of religious law, however learned and sincere, simply could not find a way to tolerate. The accounts of his execution are among the most moving in the entire literature of world mysticism. As he was led to the scaffold, he reportedly prayed not for his own salvation, but fervently for his executioners. He saw in his own death the final act of love, the beloved claiming his lover completely, removing the last veil between them. When his hands and feet were cut off, he reportedly rubbed his blood upon his face. He declared that blood was the proper cosmetic for one who comes before God in the station of love. His equanimity in the face of brutal execution was not indifference or fatalism, but the fruit of all-consuming love. This is precisely what reason cannot produce on its own. Reason tells us to preserve ourselves, to calculate survival, to negotiate between interests and ideals. Love, divine love, makes the self surrender entirely. Al-Hallaj was burned. His ashes were scattered in the Tigris, but his words could not be burned, could not be scattered, and could not be silenced. Within decades he had become a towering symbol across the Islamic world. These servants around me, they came to stone me, but I see only the friend. His is the blame and his the mercy. For some he represented the danger of mystical excess. For others he embodied the supreme dignity of the human soul in its love for God, a soul willing to sacrifice everything in pursuit of the infinite beloved. The great Persian poet Attar dedicated a section of his celebrated Tadkirat al-Awliya to Al-Hallaj, presenting him as the crown of the Sufi tradition and the purest expression of selfless love ever witnessed. Rumi invoked Al-Hallaj repeatedly in his Masnavi and Divan. The entire tradition of Persian Sufi poetry, with its images of wine, flame, moth and nightingale, owes an enormous debt to his passionate spirituality. In the modern world, the great French Orientalist Louis Massignon spent decades studying Al-Hallaj, producing a definitive biography that remains the authoritative Western academic treatment of his extraordinary life. For Massignon, Al-Hallaj was not merely an Islamic curiosity but a universal spiritual figure pointing toward the deepest possibilities of human love for the divine, a figure belonging to all of humanity equally. Contemporary scholars of comparative mysticism recognize that his insistence that love carries the soul beyond reason, beyond law, beyond the boundary of individual selfhood, resonates across every mystical tradition. Why did Mansur al-Hallaj view divine love as a path beyond human reason? The first answer is ontological. Divine love involves the union of the finite with the infinite, the human soul meeting God directly. By definition, the infinite cannot be contained within the finite categories of human reason. Reason operates by distinction, by comparison, by the logic of identity and difference, tools built for finite realities. But in the experience of divine love, these distinctions collapse entirely. The lover and the beloved become one. This state cannot be thought, it can only be lived, and living it changes the liver forever. The second answer is psychological. Divine love transforms the one who loves. It is not a static emotion felt while the subject remains otherwise unchanged, comfortable in their familiar structure of identity. It is a fire that consumes the ego, the self-centered structure of ordinary consciousness. As the ego is consumed, the very reasoner who would analyze the experience disappears. Who then is left to reason about it? This is why mystics fall back on poetry, paradox and silence, not because they are confused, but because the experience they point toward exceeds the full capacity of all discursive and analytical thought. The third answer is epistemological. Human reason knows by representation, by forming mental concepts that stand for things in the external world. Concepts are the basic currency of all rational human knowledge, but God by definition cannot be adequately represented by any concept. The divine reality is always more than any idea we form of it. Divine love as the most intimate relation imaginable cannot be conceptualized. It can only be known by participation, by direct experience, by what the Sufis call kashf, unveiling, a mode of knowing that bypasses the ordinary mediation of concepts and arguments entirely and completely. The fourth answer is existential. Divine love demands a total surrender that reason, left to its own devices, will always resist. Reason is in part the faculty of self-preservation, calculating what protects me. Divine love asks for the dissolution of that me. It asks for fana, annihilation. Reason cannot counsel its own dissolution. It cannot logically endorse its own transcendence or vote for its own disappearance. Only love, which is stronger than the ego's deepest instinct for self-preservation, can carry the human being across that final threshold, beyond thought, beyond self, beyond all human measure and all human reason. Ladies and gentlemen, more than 1,000 years have passed since Mansur Al-Hallaj stood before his executioners in Baghdad and died with the name of God on his lips, surrendered and at peace in his surrender. Can love carry the human soul to a place where reason alone cannot go? The world he lived in has changed beyond recognition. The Abbasid Caliphate is dust. The political and theological controversies that killed him have dissolved entirely into history. But his question has not dissolved. The question he lived and died for remains as fresh, as urgent, and as humanly essential as it ever was. Can love carry the human soul to a place where reason alone, however powerful, cannot go? Al-Hallaj's answer was an unqualified yes. And he staked not just his reputation or comfort or freedom, but his very life on that answer, without hesitation, without regret, without any reservation whatsoever. In a world that often worships the rational, the measurable, and the quantifiable, Al-Hallaj stands as a permanent reminder that the deepest dimensions of human experience cannot be fully mapped by reason alone. This does not make reason the enemy of faith or of love. Al-Hallaj himself was a learned man, a student of theology, a reader of Quran and Hadith, a thinker of genuine sophistication and considerable depth, but he knew from the inside, from the fire of his own experience, that when love reaches its fullest intensity, it enters a country where the maps of reason no longer fully apply and no longer suffice as guides. Only the heart, purified and emptied of self, surrendered completely to the beloved, can serve as a guide in that country. That is the gift Al-Hallaj gave the world, not a system but a burning living testimony, a testimony that divine love is real, that it transforms, that it transcends all human categories, and that the path it opens leads to the only destination that truly satisfies the deepest longing of the human heart. He was the moth, God was the flame, and in his burning he became light.